We did another radio drama, this time utilizing material from one of my favorite authors, Flannery O'Connor, and her short story, A Good Man is Hard to Find. This would mark the first time we would go outside the studio, and I would recruit some actors from the Vignette class, the literary magazine at R.L. Pascal, of which I was the editor-in-chief. This would also mark the first time that Bob Reed would come and participate in our projects. He was our creative writing teacher and the sponsor of the Vignette.
We never have seen a secret panel. Let's go see the house with the secret panel. Can we go see the house with the secret panel?
No, you never let us do anything.
You're one of my own children.
Don't touch me, lady. Well, that takes care of her. She'd have been a good woman if there had been someone there to shoot her every minute of her life.
For our next planned production, I would play Luke Skywalker, what we hoped would be a series of live-action slides and miniatures put to music and sound effects. We filmed our Star Wars models, including our AT-AT walkers using flour for snow and a cloudscape behind them, and my Millennium Falcon model that I had meticulously built and airbrushed using rear screen projection. Unfortunately, the only surviving slide from this production, other than me playing Luke, is a shot of my Millennium Falcon model. Sadly, this production would never be completed, however, because that Christmas, my family got a home video camera. Of course, it was intended for the entire family, but I jumped on it and immediately was in the backyard using my friends to learn to pan, tilt, and zoom. I even recruited my cat Jones as a subject.
Do something, Jones. Leave, Jones.
And Alan Hale and I made a little play using our Planet of the Apes action figures.
Zeta, I'm home.
My dad was a professional beekeeper, and one day when the bees swarmed, I couldn't resist grabbing the camera, donning my protective suit, and watching him thunk some bees in a hive.
1, 2, 3.
I remember wishing for 2 cameras that day to simultaneously get a close-up of the inside of the hive. Our favorite line of 1982 was,
Don't touch the phone. You'll kill yourself.
We may have had a video camera, but we didn't have an editor, so we had to edit in the camera. The problem was we couldn't consistently get clean edits in the camera. Sometimes they'd have static between them, and I spent a lot of time taping Chris Freeland trying to figure it out.
Remember, we also shot some stuff with Alan Hale, and the front of my car, I'd had a car wreck not too many days before that, and we did some stuff where Alan Hale jumped up on the hood of my car, and then it made it look like I was hitting Alan, so that was a lot of fun.
I think we were more enamored at the time being movie makers rather than actually making movies. We had several projects. One was called Battle Zone. I think the sum total of that project was a piece of paper that said Battle Zone, put to the music from A Bridge Too Far. We had one called Prolipsis. But what really turned the tide, I think, was Chris Freeland getting a video camera just like the one I was using. They were state-of-the-art for 1982. One side of the unit would detach and you could take it with the camera. And we would go camping down in Morgan, Texas. My parents owned some land, about 20 acres. We'd take my old 67 Cutlass, and me and Chris and sometimes Alan Hale would go down there and camp out in this barn that my dad had constructed out of sheet metal and angle iron, and Chris and Alan could just be themselves.
The great sword Excalibur.
But we still couldn't get clean edits in the camera.
We first learned how to edit in the camera. We were actually on vacation. We were out down at the farm.
I remember the moment we figured it out. I was taping Chris running down the side of the gravel pit, and at the bottom I messed up and had to rewind it and pause it. And that was the secret, rewinding it and pausing it just before the edit. We still got the flying erase heads, the red, blue, and green bars, but after that the edits were clean. You know, my father's piece of land, it was a great place we could go and film and not be bothered. Eventually, we would film 3 of our movies at the farm, but that day I was so excited to be able to do clean edits that I snatched up the camera and began scouting locations for a feature I wanted to do on the destruction of a keg party. My brother was always wanting to have keg parties, and I wanted to blow a keg party up.
Put the tent there and the beer inside the tent, and I found a keg we could put.
Later that day, Chris Freeland would make a very innocent comment that would prove very telling as we began pre-production on this feature-length motion picture we thought we were going to make.
The arc is open, Belloc's head explodes. It's a few lines on a piece of paper. It doesn't seem like much to you try to film. Little do they know.
Yes, Chris was correct. Little did we know. But in March of 1982, we would start pre-production on a movie called Young Flight with all the energy and enthusiasm in the world. At the time, I remember saying, look, we've got to plan this out carefully, and Chris Freeland did tons of storyboards, breaking down all the scenes with his own unique style and sense of humor. And I remember going over all the locations again and again and again. And then I began to work on casting, and we got Bob Reed, my creative writing teacher, to play a part.
Like I said, we'll all come out looking like pantomime.
That's right. Marcel Marceau.
Yeah.
Man walking into the wind. I don't know now. How is that?
That looks better.
Okay, put this back in my purse.
And we also got Joed Paris, a friend we knew at Pascal, who came in and agreed to play the main title role of Jesse. We filmed another scene with Carol Brown, my art teacher at Pascal High School, in the art room there.
Here's that airbrush you wanted, Jesse.
Oh, thank you.
Sure, but be careful with it.
We were starting some big production, which I can't even for the life of me remember now what it was about, but we had a scene shot where Bob Reed was in the living room sitting there reading, and Joed walks in.
Jesse, David's in your room.
What's he doing in there?
He came in about 30 minutes ago. I didn't think he'd be too long.
It's about all we ever ended up with on that film before it got canned and we went on to something else. Our attention spans were kind of short back then.
Don't remember there being a full story for that, but I do remember when I was doing the titles, I was sitting there thinking, despite all the planning we've done, been way over my head here, and maybe we should rethink this and start on something a little bit simpler.
The silly director.
When I'd first met Bob Reed, he'd said, write what you know. And in a sense, I wanted to do the same thing with the first movie we'd finished, Onslaught. We'd use a prop that we already had, an old-timey vacuum cleaner that my parents had gotten when they'd been married in the 50s. We'd shoot the whole thing in the office. We'd use one actor, it'd be done in camera, and we were going to finish it.
And we had to find different ways of making this vacuum cleaner hose move around. There's a lot of scenes where when it's moving, I'm actually on the other end of it pushing it, but there was a couple of scenes where we couldn't get it to do anything, and we ended up putting a broom handle inside of it. I think there's one scene where you can see Alan Hale's knee in shot. We never even realized that when we were making it.
I still get a kick out of Onslaught, and I think it's better than the movie we'd make after it. A Game of Pool isn't a very good movie, and a lot of that comes from a clumsiness that's a product of our having to shoot it in the camera. We didn't have an editor, so we had to do a shot. If it was inside, we did that. The next shot was outside, we had to move the whole rig outside. The next shot was back inside, we had to move the whole rig back inside. And this isn't a little camcorder like they have today. This is the big camera with an even bigger video unit you had to lug around. Plus, we didn't have a microphone. The only mic we had was on the camera, and it was pretty bad, so the whole movie had to be dubbed. And that kind of gives it an unnatural feeling.
There's no name on it. You can never prove that how did you say, stole it?
Okay, Oddshot, I'll play a game full for that ring. But you're going to have to put up more than the ring alone.
So will you.
My Dubby? She must have hidden the plans in the escape pod. Sitting at the... The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet. We're going to dub that line and more. And you were there.
We learned a lot from that movie, although you couldn't tell it by our next attempt.
Talk about Joe's Motel.
Joe's Motel? Why? David's father had built this elaborate set in the backyard. I mean, there was walls, a door, even an outer wall on the other side of the door, so it made it look like there was a hotel room, complete with pictures on the walls, a telephone, a lamp that actually worked.
Well, Joe's Motel was another step down for us, and I can't blame it on lack of an editor. I had this bright idea, look, let's write this really short story, takes place all on one set. In fact, let's build the set in the backyard, put the camera down in one spot, and basically not move the camera. We can concentrate on other things. The problem was, I had a great actor named David Whitley who loved to improvise, and he did a little improvisation here and one there, and before I knew it, the thing was 6 times longer than it should have been, and it's my fault. You know, I just didn't see it getting away from me, but it did get away from me, and it's really painful to watch. You know, we blew up the set about 25 minutes into the movie, and I think it was 25 minutes too late